Hey guys, I'm back with another video today discussing the tale and legacy of the Dream Junkies Part 2. Now, if you're new to the channel, I just wanted to say welcome, and just know that on this channel, we cover news releases from Christian hip-hop, album reviews, news, and song breakdowns. But from time to time, I'll also run a series called CHH History, discussing and breaking down some key moments and stories which doesn't usually get talked about around the niche music space we know as CHH. So my hope is to give you guys more insight, create discussions, and put you guys onto past albums or artists that made their own story, legacy, or impression within CHH history. Also, I have to give a huge shout out to David Livick. I know a lot of you came from David's community tab post about a week ago and just checked out the channel, so shout out to David. I truly appreciate that repost and hope to keep delivering dope content to the people, whether you're Christian or non-Christian. Last thing before we start is that if you haven't watched part 1, please take the chance to listen, as the link for that will be in the description below, because you don't want to miss out. So enough talking, and let's just get right into the video. Now, in the first video, we discussed the early origins of the Dream Junkies and the first 2 years as a group and the momentum that carried on. However, now we're gonna move on by looking at their breakout year into 2016, which was introduced by their most successful album to date, Good Religion, with which we're not only gonna be taking a look at the year itself, but we're also gonna be reviewing their album and going through each song by track order. And we'll also take a deep dive into their lyrics and break them down in order to learn more about their details, about their life stories, and how the album at that time helped create a new lane that was beginning to grow around Christian hip-hop. Now, on March 4th of 2016, the Dream Junkies released the Good Religion album, with which, if we take a look at, consists of about 12 songs, which lasts the total span of 52 minutes and 50 seconds. Right as I'm about to play the album, the first thing that definitely catches my eye, obviously, is the Polaroid influenced cover art. Generally, I find that Polaroid photos are dope as they have a certain mystique and, dark undertone about them, and I also find that they can give more detail to the story in the sense of making the viewer second guess themselves instead of assuring them. Because regular photos usually do a good job of typically explaining what's going on in the shot, but Polaroid photos in the sense do the complete reverse, by forcing you, the viewer, to almost second guess what's going on. Where is this picture taking place? Is Belief looking in disbelief at something, or is he just covering his mouth to not speak at that moment? Why is John looking down, and is Ruslan purposely trying to look at the camera, or did the cameraman just take this shot by accident? There are so many questions to answer that the picture demands of the viewer. And I think that to the Christian audience at that time too, in 2016, it may have presented the question, is this Christian or non-Christian? Are they trying to draw the listener in with a curious art style in order to effectively tell their story, or perhaps convey a certain mood? Now, in my opinion, I'd say that it definitely draws the listener's attention, as if you were to compare many other creative albums that came out the years before or after, there are hardly any albums that use Polaroid imagery, and that visually alone makes it stand out. And in addition, it also reveals a potential foreshadowing to the listener that this might not be a Christian album that you're traditionally used to hearing.
What if it has nothing to do with where we come from, but where we going?
Alright, now moving on to the track list, we have the intro, which invites the listener into this unfamiliar territory and sets this serious tone and mood, as well as the thesis for what the Good Religion album is going to be about. And it also asks about the what ifs of life and the rules that people may live by when life is going picture perfect, but then flips everything upside down by asking the listener then, what would you do when everything goes wrong? And it also poses the question that could people you become dependent on double cross you? What would you do then? Could you still love your neighbor as yourself, or would you break out of character? And more importantly, what kind of legacy will you leave behind, and what will people think of you?
I remember but nothing really mattered as much.
Moving on, we have one of the more popular songs on the album on track 2 called Take Me Back, and it pushes a catchy chorus sang by a woman named Gracie, whose lyrics say, "Take me back to the good old days, I was still stuck in my ways, maybe that was just a phase, but we here now, so let's do it for the now." And the song touches on a number of teenage and childhood memories growing up for the guys in California, with stories from Ruslan ambitiously trying to make the NBA and eating government lunches every day, to Junkies, who gives references to riding with the gangsta lean, which was a trending and laid-back driving position among many Chevy drivers in California. We then also have Belief as well in the song, who briefly touches on driving with his friends in the Pat's car throughout his youth. And the song Take Me Back also gives the listener as well a nostalgic feel, almost as if you're going back to the 90s with a California sunset in the background, as if you're just enjoying life as a kid.
Jumps the boogie, tiptoe through time, trust the boogie oogie till I free my mind. Touch the boogie oogie till I feel alive. I feel it inside, I'm feeling the vibe.
Now track 3, Boogeyman, is probably one of their more aggressive tracks on the album. The fast-paced beat you hear in the background complements the flow and direction of the song as they talk about the pressures and hardships, such as John putting his trust in God as he reveals that he writes his music for his friends spending time in jail, and to Believe talking about being racially profiled when he goes out in public. I would definitely give it a listen, as it gives insight to people who can relate to certain parts of their faith and or life experiences.
Mother lover, you gon' love this. Graduated from a rebel to a revolutionary in my area, they love this. I'ma wreck it like I'm revving the engine, heaven's ascension, every dimension, give me attention. Look at my soul, look at my heart, look at my hope.
Now moving on, we have track 4, which is undebatedly the most popular and most streamed song off the album, I Got the Juice, which is a very upbeat and vibrant and high-tempo song. I also find the most enjoyable part of the song is especially hearing the build-up in the pre-chorus by Belief.
I just gotta go off on it. I just know to put the sauce on it. I don't care about the cost on it. I just gotta get lost on it. I'm just trying to break loose. I'm about to light the fuse. I just need me a cup. I'ma pour me the juice.
I find the buildup of the chorus is very catchy, and also another part that I enjoyed is Ruslan later on talking about how even though they rap and talk about God, nobody should be looking to these guys as pastors. And I know that Ruslan often mentions this even today in his videos, that Christians shouldn't treat rappers like some kind of pastor to direct their own theology, but more so like a spiritual supplement to help aid them in their faith and daily life. On the side, it's also a great song to listen to whenever you're working out or just going out for the day.
I swear y'all don't know about the West.
Now, by track 5, the mood of the album drastically shifts into a more mellower pace by their song called Left. Now, the song is featured by Murs, who is well known around the old school West Coast hip hop scene, and delivers a solid verse where he opens up about his experiences with God, being gracious in his life, growing up in Los Angeles, while also avoiding death several times, and growing up trying to make it out of his neighborhood, while also fighting his personal demons. Even though it's seen as taboo for Christian rappers to collaborate with secular artists, it's just great to hear rappers from other lanes coming onto voice and share their experiences with God. The song also comes with a smooth hook from John.
Left coast, west side up high. Left coast, west side up high. Left coast, west side up high. Left coast, or your west side up high.
Which complements the song's message, also paying homage to living life around the West Coast.
I'm only inspired when I'm tired, and I'm tired of suckers telling us they like us. Then they bite us cause they wanna be just like us. Do a show around the corner.
Track 6, titled Shoot Me, which if you get by listening to the chorus, simply implies the main message that if you don't like what I'm about to say, then shoot me. It takes a more serious and unapologetic tone in the album, addressing a lot of personal frustrations that the collective had, and one in particular they addressed, which was their personal frustration with the toxic culture behind the scenes of Christian hip-hop. And it's pretty clear when Ruslan even directly addresses this by stating, "We all got a short memory, don't we? Thinking how society influenced us low-key, and they the originators of this thing. Don't let the same team mantra fool you. We are not the same. That's like saying Lecrae was the first first to do it, even though before church closed, Show left for the same movement. Who you think they was kicking it with, who you think they was pulling from at a time, where if you weren't preaching explicitly up in your rhymes, you were considered illegitimate. Now everyone's an activist, thinking that they mastered this. It's accurate that when we did this first, it was so sacrilege and blasphemous, Rapzilla wasn't posting it, Holy Culture was roasting us, and now every blog wants a quote from us, like we some type of poster kids for Christian rappers coping with the toxic culture that was then created by the legalist. Believe in this, be on, so we could speak to the one heathenist, the sinners of our time, which includes you and I. This is not a breakup letter, this is just me speaking my mind, probably for the last time. And before you give props, stop and give it up for the real OGs, Tunnel Rats and Future Shock. Now to me, it seems that he's referring to the fact that rapping about social issues was solely being accepted in Christian hip-hop, but not embraced, as he gives reference to Sho Baraka, who left Reach Records early on in 2011, who would later reveal that he in part left because he wanted to focus more on social issues as an artist and reach people outside of the church. His particular stance and heart for Black activism within marginalized communities was not very popular at that time until Lecrae jumped on and addressed these issues a few years later. Ruslan also gives reference to the toxic culture created by legalists, as they were considered illegitimate for not strictly preaching theology in their rhyme, and also blogs like Rapzilla and the fan culture, which had essentially shunned them out. And Ruslan definitely had no drama with Rapzilla, as they have done interviews with them and there are some Rapzilla articles about them. However, I do feel that not everybody around the publication was on board with them and their music at the time, and so there was still a lot of tension, especially from a lot of fans. However, Ruslan was simply just trying to honestly express how him and other artists felt at that time, as the cultural expectation was that artists had to have a deep theology in all of their songs and were seen as secular the second they started to express other parts of their life. Ruslan further clarifies by mentioning that he isn't breaking up with CHH, and hopes to move on from speaking his mind, probably for the last time. Lastly, he briefly gives props to Tunnel Rats and Future Shock, who were one of the first rap groups within Christian hip-hop to trailblaze the same approach that the Dream Junkies and some others had been hoping to aim for.
I showed up to the show a little early, ready for sound check. You told me, what are you doing? You shouldn't be around yet. Well, I didn't know.
But moving on from the heavy stuff, we jump right back into track 7 called Showbiz, which really lightens the mood of the album again. It touches on what goes on before the shows, from the sound checks to people asking belief about John Gibbs, and just a lot more about what goes on in show business.
Guess my days chasing days now.
Moving on, we have track 9 titled On the Road, which presses into the hardships of being on the road, as I know a lot of artists in music generally talk about this and how stressful and exhausting touring can be. John touches on this fight to strive for not only what's on earth, but also heavenly things, as he's trying to fight off adversity from the devil daily. Ruslan talks about the sacrifice and struggle of being on the road, away from his wife and child, and realizing that if he wants to be the change in people's lives, then he has to start by being there for his family first. And Belief as well addresses his family issues and also talks about the misconceptions that people have of touring and how going on tour to rap in front of crowds isn't all that it's made out to be. The song is a great message to let people know that not everything is all sunshine. They're all coming from an honest and faith-based perspective to share how leading a family or staying strong in the faith truly isn't easy.
Who you think you is, young blood, you up and left. I was on my deathbed, took my last.
Track 9, Going Left, is almost like a part 2 to the previous song, but it gets more personal, highlighting in particular with Belief talking about his struggle in forgiving those who destroy his trust, and John being completely vulnerable with his struggles with nicotine and personal trauma. And to some, the things that they talk about might not sound biblical or Christian enough, but these are the things with which the Dream Junkies were wanting to be open about, as they knew that they had plenty of junk and baggage in their lives that they just wanted to express through their rhymes. Going Left will be the last track on the album where they pour out their grievances, as this finally brings us to track 10 titled Answer Your Call. And this not only is personally my favorite song out of the album, but I believe it's the most relatable to us all, The song softly lightens the mood as if you're just alone thinking at night, and Carlene Crawford, who's listed as the main feature, gives a very soothing hook throughout the song. The song talks about questioning who will be there for you when you mess up, and if people in your circle will have your back when you fall and make human errors, and just being around the people that you'd consider even closer than your own family. It's a main message overall that I find answers the main questions at the beginning of the album, especially which is who will be there for you when you're down and out, and how will you move on. I would definitely give it a listen whenever you get the chance, as it's a song that will give you a deep thinking introspection on life.
For them streets you had loyalty, but God intended you for royalty. You said you never let the homies go, watch I let the sun shine, brother John, let them grow.
Get on for you, smell my smoke.
Yeah.
Get on for you, smell my smoke. Get on. You better get on for you, smell my smoke.
At track 11, the song called Secondhand Smoke lets the listener know that the album is almost over. It's a great song with a great hook rapped by John, and talks about the relationship between John and Belief as they're actually brothers-in-law. And it just breaks down what it's like for Belief to tour with John and dealing with his nicotine habit. And in no way do I want to allude that I'm supporting the actual use of smoking, but I am referring to the fact that Belief does talk about his distaste and having to avoid being around John and his bad habit of smoking. John and the others are in no way perfect, but they're showing the day-to-day obstacles and hurdles that they all face when it comes to working through their faith and individual responsibilities. And finally, the last track on the album, titled All I Need, is a slow and steady guitar beat which almost sounds like you're somewhere on the beach while watching a sunset.
All I need is just a little time to get it right. All I need is just a little time to get it right. All I need is just a little time to get it right.
And it's a great closeout track which talks about God being there in the midst of their messes and doubt, as they know that it's hard knowing that God is still there despite their imperfections. They also address their loved ones and how thankful they are for being there in their lives as God works through them. And that, guys, concludes the album. I think that overall this was a flexible album that covered the life and culture of California, while also working through some realities from their own perspectives. It's also a great album with great faith-based values and real-life perspectives for the Christian and non-Christian alike, as it can relate to real-life problems we all go through. Despite the group wanting the music to reach people, including Christians, without boxing themselves within the label of strictly only Christian hip-hop, the album still leaves behind a memorable moment. The album went on to chart on the Billboard Top 100 for independent artists, charting as high as number 19. Which I believe is the first time any independent group or collective has ever charted that high, coming out of a music subgenre that was still small compared to other genres. The Good Religion album showed people that you can still reach people from the boundaries of CHH, whether inside or outside, and it showed that the space was still growing, as the Good Religion album showed that you could still reach people outside of the church without the labeling and politics of Christian hip-hop. And that's no disrespect to Reach Records nor their fanbase, as they've always been a successful staple within the culture of Christian hip-hop. However, there was also a need for artists to step into other parts that the culture was scarcely being catered to, such as Christians talking about social issues affecting their communities, or Christians performing in spaces that are considered secular. Starting your own label or making music independently on your own terms allowed artists the flexibility to reach and speak into people's lives outside of the church. And that's great to see. Their album would go on to reach over 1 million streams, and their most popular song, I Got the Juice, will go on to hit 1 million views on YouTube, which isn't a lot nowadays, but back then, that was pretty impressive for an independent group just coming out of a small music market. In addition, the most streamed song, I Got the Juice, also went on to be featured in a sponsored commercial for Adidas, some TV shows, and various YouTube channels, trafficking a wave of new supporters. The Dream Junkies Junkies had finally hit the peak of their careers as a group. However, like I said in my previous video, this album would not only go on to be their biggest album ever, but also their last. And that's what we'll discuss next week as we wrap up the second of 3 parts on the tale and legacy of the Dream Junkies, and proceed into part 3 next week, the future of the Dream Junkies.